And I think there are probably natural wrong thinkers. You're probably one of them that naturally occur to spawn innovation in the human species. And Steve Jobs or Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Yvon Chouinard in business. But I started thinking about what about 99.5% of the rest of us,
Right.
and
Yeah.
how do you do that? How
Yeah.
do you trick it?
If origami's your thing, you're shit out of luck. But if you want to power your business with creativity, you won't be a schmuck. You want to paint like Van Gogh, you're shit out of luck. Want to learn how to sing, you're shit out of luck. But if you want brilliant business ideas, we'll get you unstuck. Get inside the woodshed. Get inside the woodshed. Welcome to the woodshed.
Hi, welcome to another edition of the Woodshed. We're here in CPB, and I'm joined today with my good friend John Bielenberg. How you doing?
Good. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Well, we'll find out whether it really is great by the time it's done. But it's nice of you to say that. Are you really excited?
I am.
Yeah. I haven't seen you in a while. It's cool.
Yeah, I love to be back in Boulder.
Well, John, one-time Boulder native. Very famous designer. Is it okay if I say that you're a famous designer?
It's like being a famous plumber.
I don't
It's
know.
like only other plumbers know the famous ones.
Well, that might be true. Yeah. Famous designer. You're an entrepreneur. You're an imaginative guy. And you are a advocate of thinking wrong, which
I am.
is an amazing term.
Yeah.
And I love that. So go ahead.
Oh, it's just meant to be provocative,
Right.
right? So, it's just to have somebody say, what?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, and also you're not really satisfied with what people think of as thinking right right? So the average thinking is it's dull. It drives everything to a mean, right?
Yeah.
And so for me and anyone out there who's listening to the show, we spend a lot of time talking about business creativity. I think there's two aspects of that. One is in unleashing that. One is having the confidence to just try things, and we're going to help people learn how to have that confidence. And I think the other piece of it is just the origination of those ideas. And we all have tricks. If you're in the business, you have tricks. If you're not in the business and you are a plumber and you're trying to use creativity to help your business, and even if you are in the business, it's kind of fun to share those tricks. And you talk about it literally as like, is it fooling your mind or tricking your mind into tricking your mind? And I think that's exactly what it is. I think of it that way too. Like tricking your mind into coming up with something that isn't the standard fare, right?
Yeah. The way our minds work is we create these neural pathways and synaptic connections over time that allow us to exist in the world, right? So speaking is one of them, walking is one of them. You can't really relearn it every morning, right? So it works for that. But it doesn't work so well for new ideas or creativity.
If you go into work at your job, at your agency, and you approach it like walking, it's not going to be a good result, I guess.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No. But that's what your mind does. It
Right.
wants to maximize the efficiency between a thought and an action, right? And the quickest way is to follow a pre-existing pathway. A good way to think of it is if you're a mountain climber and you climb up to one peak and there's another one close by, throw over a rope and you create a bridge over, and somebody else coming up, they're going to use that bridge. They're not going to create another one because it's already built.
Yeah.
And your mind just does that. It'll follow pre-existing pathways.
Right.
Racism is an example. If you grow up in an environment that has racist thoughts or ideas or tendencies, that actually those synapses will fire enough to create a bridge.
Yeah.
And that's how you'll think. this skin color means this, you know.
It's so, I mean, you're making it really depressing now.
Sorry.
But it's
human.
It's human, and it's science, right? It originates in a part of our brains, in a part of our survival where it made sense. And now we're faced with different challenges, even in our day-to-day work, but also, huge challenges. You talk about, some of the mega challenges like climate stuff that are going to require us to think, not along the same lines, because that's just more disaster.
Right.
Yeah. So is it too early, or should we talk about some of the tricks?
No, we can talk about that.
Because it could be too early. Maybe we need to explore the science of the brain a little bit more. You guide me
here. I'll tell you where it all came from.
My stomach just grumbled. Did we pick that up? That's amazing.
So where I came up with this whole idea, I was working with a client that was in the investment business, and they had hired a behavioral psychologist from Cornell to come in and help them figure out how other investment managers, people kind of managing billions of dollars, were victims of what they called their heuristic biases. So they would make the trade towers get attacked. There would be a bias towards a certain action. Right? Sell these stocks or whatever. These guys were trying to exploit that human nature and basically outthink them. And I was like, I bet we all do that. Like here I am in the design profession. We think we're creative, but we're all following pre-existing
Oh, yeah. I mean, you
pathways.
could see like design from the 50s has a look. Design from the 60s has a look. Like clearly we're mostly coming in and following a pathway.
Yeah. But then you look at the most celebrated people or organizations, that are truly innovating or coming up with ideas you couldn't imagine, right? Conceiving the inconceivable. They're not somehow. There's something that has prevented them from following those pre-existing pathways, right?
Yeah.
And so I just started thinking, how do you do that?
Well, you were talking about, you just gave a presentation to the agency. It was a lot of fun. One of the slides you put up was someone gets attacked in South Africa by a shark, and then people don't go into the water in California.
Right.
And those two in our brains seem like a very basic connection. Shark bad, safety good, water scary now, don't go in. But in reality and statistically, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like outrageously ridiculous that behavior would change like that.
Right. Yeah. There's a good.
I was sitting next to somebody. I'm like, I don't think like that. So I really don't. Like and I think there are people that don't. There are people who don't put these things, don't have. I just was like, I don't have that pathway. And I feel good about it. It probably makes certain aspects of life harder. It makes being a creative director maybe easier. But if you do have it, and even if you don't have it, there's a lot of techniques to get you to sever it, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Sever that normal pathway and then arrive somewhere different and create an inflection point or a moment of creativity.
Right. Yeah. And I think there are probably natural wrong thinkers. You're probably one of them that naturally occur to spawn innovation in the human species. And there's Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, Yvon Chouinard in business. These are people who somehow are hardwired differently. And I think they have different kinds of personalities. But I started thinking about what about 99.5% of the rest of us?
Right.
And how do you do that? How do you trick it?
Well, I don't know, I don't know. I don't know whether I have to trick my mind, but I still have techniques. And some of what you talked about, it reminded me of like, think wrong is a little bit about something that I always try to do, which is what's the opposite.
Right.
But what's funny is that, there aren't natural opposites. And so it isn't an easy technique. It's a somewhat random technique for me, And like with music, I always think, the opposite of what we think we should put on here is what's going to really unlock this. But in music, there aren't opposites. It's not like a color wheel where it's like, purple's the opposite of yellow, right?
Yeah.
But when you hit it, you realize, that is so diametrically opposed to what I thought the solution would be.
Right.
And it happens over and over. If you're in a creative field, you realize the power of the opposite,
Right.
the power of thinking wrong.
Yeah, and that brings up something else I think about, which is our brains are also designed to filter out everything that's regular, not interesting, not essential, not funny. So if you and I are walking down Pearl Street having a conversation, there's stuff everywhere. People, billboards, signs, cars. Our brains just don't pay attention. Someone walks by with a little dog and the dog has a hat on. I go, hey, check out the dog with a hat, because it's your brain all of a sudden says, hey, pay attention. There's something, in this case, funny or unusual, right?
Yeah.
So you have these conflicting forces. One is like the status quo, business as usual, that's trying to get things to be what's expected and regular. But what gets noticed is stuff that doesn't fit that. Mm-hmm. And it's this weird tension between the two. There's a dissonance.
Yeah. I always think of it as maybe because I like to surf, but I always think of it as there's the surface of the water, right? And then there's the foam on top of the water. And very few things break up above the foam. That's my thought process, is like, you got to get above the foam.
Right.
Or no one will ever notice it.
Yeah.
Right. So you started developing these philosophies, and at some point you're like, I'm gonna put it in a book. What led to that, and when was that?
I think 2012. So I'd been running these student projects called Project M, and I started thinking about how do you make this have bigger impact? It's great to have these students, 10, 12 at a time, kind of learn thinking wrong and really how to do that and how much fun it is. But you also have to do it from the top down and work with large organizations. So to do that, I had to codify it more and make it into more of a process, even though I kind of feel like it's more like jazz. It's more like Miles Davis writing a few things on a napkin and going from there than it is a symphony where everything. But we had to do that to make it palatable for large corporations.
Can I read the book and become a wrong thinker from reading the book?
I think no, I
doubt that's such an awesome, 99.9% of people are going to say yes to that when they've got a book. That's the best answer.
I think you can
Hey, don't buy this. It won't work.
I think you can understand the value of it. I don't know that you're a natural wrong thinker when you finish.
But you'll find germs of ideas and ways and probably some techniques for tricking.
Yeah. And I'm past that now. I've got new stuff cooking.
You got even a better book in the works.
I think it's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure.
It is this Think NATO?
It is
Think
NATO.
Like Sharknado.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Think Storm.
Think Storm. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Tornado thinking, we call it.
It's awesome.
And it's not that the think wrong process isn't valuable and good. I think it's a little too formulaic. It's trying to put things in boxes when the creative process has to be a little more flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that, but I also like getting really practical. And I know people are going to want to come away with a couple very specific things like they could try in their own lives.
Sure.
One of the things that I try all the time, or I do all the time, I don't really try. Instead of thinking of an idea, I begin to say, hey, you know what we should do is and I know that I don't know the end of the sentence, but it forces me to put it out there. And it is amazing and it's not 100%, maybe 8 times out of 10, something comes out.
Right.
And it can be pretty interesting. And sometimes nothing comes out. And my friends will be like, you doing that thing? I was like, yeah, I got nothing. And so give me an idea of one of those that you've got.
Sure. So my version of that is it's not this, but right. So it gets you off the hook from looking stupid. But some of the techniques I think that work well one is be stupid. So you've got a project, you're coming up with ideas. What's the stupidest thing you could possibly do? And then you start there.
I love that.
And it always ends up leading to something more interesting.
Because it's not really easy to think of a stupid thing, but there's no pressure in thinking of a stupid thing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So another one is
wait.
Oh,
Like, I want to finish that because you were talking a little bit about that. So then you come up with something really stupid.
Yeah.
And then you got to make sense of it in a way, right? Like, so take the stupid thing and then make it really work.
Right.
Yeah.
So, an example would be like, let's get a bus and put monkeys in it and drive around, right? And that's funny. It's
that's
stupid.
that happens to not be stupid. Do you have another example? Because that makes a lot of sense to me.
Free cigarettes.
Because I don't
for
have
kids.
that. I don't have that line.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Free cigarettes for kids.
Yeah. To get them more involved in literacy in Oakland.
Amazing.
So obviously there's no connection between those things. So you just have to figure it out. Yeah. And what that's doing is your brain, because it doesn't have a pre-existing linear pathway, you have to create one from scratch. That makes
so much sense to me.
Yeah.
I love that part of it because it's so rational. It's like if you think of something that really is quote unquote stupid, right? Then you are off the reservation, you're off the path, and you got to bushwhack it, right? Back to like some things that accomplish some things.
Right.
So what happens? That's a real example, the cigarettes for kids and literacy. And if you think, you said this earlier, if you think about literacy, if I say literacy for kids, boom, that neural pathway just got like paved, right?
Yeah.
But then I say free cigarettes for kids.
Start there.
Now it's nothing but field.
And people struggle at the beginning, so they laugh, free cigarette, yeah. And then they struggle, like, I got nothing. Like, I got nothing on that. But when you start to unpack it, you can just start, unpacking free, like free.
Right.
Kids, they're free stuff. Or what do tobacco companies do to get kids hooked on cigarettes, right? They use music and sports and events, and
also it's illicit. It's an adult thing. It's like, hey kids, reading's for adults.
Right.
Right. Like, you don't want to be reading until I don't want to catch you reading until you're 21.
Right.
And like,
exactly.
You could. That's a dumb idea. I'm still in the dumb idea area, but you could feel the energy of it a little bit, right? It's leading somewhere.
There's always something.
Yeah.
There's another one we call random word. So you generate on Post-its and you write it on the sticky side, not the regular side. And you'll say, what's your greatest fears? People write down. Then what's your favorite food, right? And then you stick them up and people randomly pick two. And so they pick one from the fear, one from the food. So it could be syphilis biscuit, right? And you start there. So it's the same thing, but it's more random, right? And I like that one a lot. It always works.
Yeah. Well, it's also fun and it's interactive. And I think in a way, you tend to make things physical too. You use a lot of sticky notes. You use a lot of drawing and putting stuff on whiteboards. And I feel like now that I'm listening to your approach, which is destroy existing neural pathways, essentially,
right, as
a way to get to somewhere new.
Right.
So I think getting physical with your thinking is another way where you just can't, as you move into the physical environment, you can't help but wind up being influenced by new things.
Right. Right. And, there's no rules. There's no wrong answers, and it's got to be kind of messy.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you go into corporations and they have their conference rooms are pristine. And it's much better when it's an improvisational space that's not precious.
Yeah.
And you fill it with shit all over the place.
Yeah. Okay. What's another one? I only have two as well, so. But you wrote a book, so you got to have another one.
I have a lot more. There's one we use, which we call Get Out. So you go out before you even start. So you've got some challenge, how do we eliminate paper cups at Starbucks? And you do a Get Out, and you have to go 10 different places, meet 10 people you don't know, come back with 10 stories.
That's a great one. I did that with you one time.
I think
Yeah, we did
for
that.
SodaStream.
Maybe
was that?
SodaStream, or maybe we did it in Alabama. I don't know. I feel
Oh,
like we
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
did
we
that.
probably did.
Yeah.
And they can be related to
It's so hard for
coffee
me
or-
too, because I don't like to talk to people. Like that one was rough.
I hate it. I
Yeah.
usually avoid it. I don't like that at all. But people come back and with really interesting
Amazing.
stuff that can all of a sudden generate a project from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about tricking your mind to solve a problem from an unexpected place.
From a new angle.
Yeah.
From a new place.
A new place.
Yeah.
And then you go through a whole process of, yeah, this is awesome, but how do we smallify that? How would we do that? You know? How with 2 weeks and $1,000, what could we do? You know, and we call that small bets.
I like that.
Yeah. Let's just place some small bets.
And they can be, we're suggesting small bets as, you know, basically testing some things using hacking, you know, Google AdWords and things like that. But there's a lot of other ways to do small bets. Yours tend to be more physical or more like a small execution. Tell the story of Pi Labs, just because I feel like it's so, to me, I love it because it started with a comment, like just an offhand comment, and it grew into an amazing place.
Yeah. So this is in Project M, the student program.
Would you say that that's like a small bet? That is an example of small?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. There were several small bets in that
Right.
process. And a lot of times when you get groups working on projects, it's hard to coalesce around an idea, right?
Right.
That's stupid. I don't like that.
I just had that this morning.
Yeah. And so they ended up going to a bar and went around the table and had to reveal a hidden talent. And one kid, Archie, was a tennis champion in high school. Another girl could juggle flaming clubs. And we got to the last girl, Rosanna was her name, and she said, well, I like pie. I was like, that doesn't count. Like, that's not a talent, you know?
And then as you said that, you were like, I can't believe I'm the guy critiquing this.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it was perfect. So it happened to be March 13th. So March 14th, 3.14 pi, P-I. So they thought that was clever. Let's just do this free pie day, they called it.
Yeah.
So they baked pies, set up the table on Main Street, and just had this open event. And there was an alchemy to pie and coffee that lubricated
It was
conversation.
before pie was as cool as it was. I think this is an influential, like, I think you made pie cooler, honestly, culturally.
Perhaps.
It started
it
there.
wasn't cool. Like,
No,
I thought
remember.
it was stupid. I really thought it was a
I
stupid
remember
idea.
pie not being cool when you did that.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't.
But pie's very cool right now.
Yeah, maybe.
That was you, man.
So I wasn't me. It was the students.
But it's ideas always start small, no matter how big they get.
Well,
they all start small.
Yeah. And so they just baked pies. They put on this event, painted stuff orange, and people came and they realized there was something about gathering people over food that could facilitate conversation to drive ideas.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we learned something from that experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So then they created this concept called Pi Lab, which sounds cool. You know, it's almost a random word mashup.
Right.
And they said, well, let's do a pop-up Pi Lab in rural Alabama for the summer and see if it makes sense. So that was the second small bet. You know, I gave them $600 total.
Wow.
And they had to build out this pop-up space.
Is that in the book? Because it's a beautiful space.
Well, this was the prior
Oh, this is the
one.
prior one. Okay.
Which
then
was
you
fine.
did the $2,000 space that
We did
got second place in some
in the
big,
James Beard Awards, which are like the Academy Awards for food.
in the budget of what came in first place.
It was the new Guggenheim restaurant. Yeah.
What do you think their budget was? Was it over
more than $2,000?
More than
I'm sure.
$2,000.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we eventually opened up this permanent pie lab in this rural town that was very depressed. Nothing was going on, and started baking pies and having events and open mic nights and bike rides. And it really got picked up in the press. I think because it was a bunch of students in this rural town, largely African-American, that was having a transformative effect.
I was down there about a year probably after it opened.
Yeah.
Was about, and
Yep.
nothing was open on Main Street.
Right.
And now
it's hard to park.
Wow.
Yeah, last time I was
That's
there,
incredible.
it's probably 90% occupied now.
And it's a beautiful old Main Street.
Yeah.
You know, was it the hotel that hadn't been
the
occupied
Greensboro Hotel. Yeah.
since the Second World War? Or was
Yeah.
that the bank?
It was the Opera House and the
Yeah,
hotel
okay.
had both been closed, for decades.
Yeah, amazing. And
Yeah.
it's back.
It's back.
Started
Yeah,
with
yeah.
pie.
It
Started with
with
pie and folding tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like pie.
It's right. And someone is saying the worst possible contribution
Exactly.
of hidden talent. I like pie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else is going on with you that you're excited about right now?
Yeah, right now I'm at the University of Kansas, and I started something called the Think Wrong Institute.
Professor Bielenberg.
Well, kind of. Yeah, I have a fake PhD, as you do.
I have one of those too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fake doctorate.
Yeah. Right.
I found that doesn't really count.
Honorary?
Honorary.
Honorary.
Yeah,
See, I heard it does count. We've got conflicting information.
maybe.
Well,
I did.
carry
it's
on.
fine.
Carry
I'm
on.
happy to have it.
Carry on, doctor.
Okay. So I'm bringing this kind of disruptive creative thinking, the Think Wrong methodology, into a large academic institution. And that's really fun. We're working on a project right now to set the land speed record at Bonneville
Oh my
next
God.
summer. Yeah, and do a Think Wrong version of that.
Now, I think the record is like almost the speed of sound. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, it is at the high end. We're trying to set the 500cc diesel record, which is basically a pump engine. And the
So
current
you found this niche that you think
we
you
found
can
a
succeed
niche
in.
we
I
can
love that.
exploit. And it's 57 miles an hour for that category. But it should be fun. And we're trying to totally think. So most land
I'm
speed
so jealous
cars,
right now.
it's the streamliner category. So most look like, cigars, very
Mhm.
streamlined jets without wings. I was thinking, what if it was vertical, like a fin, like you stood up and drove rather than like lay down.
Yeah.
It's still streamlined.
Well, I don't know if thinking wrong will work with aerodynamics. It's interesting, like I've tried to do it a lot with gravity and it has not worked out for me.
But I think if it's 57 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that many forces working on you.
If you can find someone willing to like travel standing up, you might have
Well,
to drive it yourself.
There's a point where there's a vicious crosswind at Bonneville, which I think would just like ruin it.
That's an awesome project.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's an example of one of the things you're so good at is just manifesting a reality and a life that you want.
Yeah.
Like most people don't go work at a university and then find themselves in the Bonneville, like on the salt flats. I can't say Bonneville, on the salt flats, trying to set a record. Like that's amazing.
Yeah. There's another project I'm just starting.
You're going to hurt my feelings now.
That's called I Fly.
Yeah.
And it has to do with sort of how do you unlock an unconventional life? It's kind of the van life is sort of a version of that, but how do you not just gonna live in a van, but how do you be more creative? How do you think wrong about where you live or what kind of dwelling you have? Like what's a think wrong
That is
house?
epic.
And yeah, I think it's time.
Unconventional life that's an epic
And
thing to
people
sort of
want
champion.
it. They're questioning, the status quo.
But
and
you've always had that. Like you don't give a fuck about what the status quo
it
is.
scares me.
Yeah.
Like that's
well, maybe
my
you do give
greatest
it. Maybe you
fear.
do give a fuck then. I imagine you just don't notice that you just sort of have this life that's very unique.
My greatest fear is being in a suburb and having a regular life.
I don't worry about that for you. I think you'll be fine. I think you've missed it. Yeah. I think you're going to be good. So if I'm listening and I want to follow you, which I do, right? Where do I go? What are some of the sites I can check out? Like obviously I can find this book. Do I find it on Amazon? Where do I find it?
It's on Amazon. It has its own website. If you just Google Think Wrong, it'll come up.
Okay.
You can look at projectmlab.com, which are all the student projects we've worked on.
Great.
So those are good places. I have a new project called the Pando Institute, which is specifically focused on creating what I call equilibrium. So we're kind of past this. We're not sustainable.
Nice. Yeah.
So how do we create this idea of equilibrium? How do we exist with the environment.
How about the social? Do you have a Twitter and those kind of things? Can I follow you on that?
Probably.
You're not that active.
Oh yeah,
I think people just want to know what's going on with John
not
Bielenberg.
Twitter. I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
Just John Bielenberg.
John
and,
Bielenberg.
I also Instagram for sure.
Okay.
J Bielenberg on Instagram.
All right. Beautiful. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, sure.
Today's show, John, is sponsored by your book, Think Wrong. Go out and get it. John loses 35 cents every time you buy his book. So don't buy too many. If you maybe buy one and then share it, would that be okay?
That's fine.
Okay. No, seriously, pick this thing up. It's amazing. You're going to find a whole bunch of tricks. You're going to be inspired. John just spoke to the entire agency, and people were just vigorously writing down the whole time. You just inspired a lot of people. So thanks for doing that.
Sure.
Thanks for listening. John, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
You can go to the woodshedshow.com, and we've got all the links that John talked about, all the links for our show and all our social. And we appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Woodshed Show.